The night my restaurant opened, I reserved the corner booth. Not for a critic, not for an investor. For my mother, my father, my sister Dana. I had spent 11 months turning a gutted textile warehouse into Carta Bianca, White Page, a 40-seat tasting menu restaurant in a city that had already declared fine dining dead. The walls were raw concrete, softened by hanging moss. Every dish was plated on handmade ceramic I had commissioned myself. The sommelier was a 26-year-old from Oaxaca who could make a room fall in love with a glass of orange wine. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever made. The corner booth had 4 settings. By 8:30 p.m., it still had 4 settings. My phone vibrated against the linen. I had been checking it obsessively for an hour, convinced of traffic, of a dead battery, of something reasonable. Instead, a Facebook check-in. My father, Gerald, had tagged himself at the Oasis Lounge, a hotel bar 14 blocks away. In the photo, he was laughing with his arm around Dana, his perfect daughter, his perpetual project. My mother was cropping herself out of the edge of the frame with a cocktail. Dana was grinning at whoever was behind the camera. The caption read, "Big things in motion, family first." I stared at the words until they stopped making sense. Family first. From the lounge 14 blocks away. I set the phone face down on the pass and looked at my sous chef, Priya. She read my face without a word. She reached over and picked up the 4-place settings from the corner booth, the good glasses, the hand-stitched napkins, the ceramic chargers I'd sourced from a ceramicist in Portugal, and carried them to the station without being asked. A chef learns not to waste good ingredients. That night, I seated a retired school teacher at the corner booth, a woman who had saved for 3 months to bring her daughter for a birthday dinner. They ordered the full tasting menu. They cried at the 3rd course, a simple broth of roasted bones and herbs that tasted, the daughter later wrote on her review, like being forgiven. I didn't cry, not then. I had 11 more courses to execute. Gerald arrived at 10 a.m. He didn't knock. He walked in through the service entrance, which I had propped open for the produce delivery, like he had keys, like it was already partly his. He was wearing the blazer he always wore to meetings where he wanted to seem serious without actually doing anything serious. He stood in the middle of my dining room and looked around the way a developer looks at a building he's calculating the demolition cost of. "Quiet morning," he said. "We don't open until 6, I said. Right. He traced his finger along the edge of a table. "Listen, Nico, about last night. You don't have to explain it." "Good." He sat down, uninvited. "Because what I need to talk about is more important than a dinner." I came around the bar and stood across from him. I didn't sit. I have learned that in negotiations, height is communication. "Dana needs liquidity," he said. "You know how she is. Big vision, slow execution. She has a property deal in Meridian Heights, commercial rezoning, massive upside, but she's been locked out of the capital stack at the last minute." The lead investor got cold feet. He paused, watching me. "We need $75,000 to bridge the gap. It's a short window, 30 days, guaranteed return, and you come in as a silent partner." $75,000. 11 months of my life were hanging on the walls of this room. I had $80,000 in savings. The restaurant wasn't profitable yet, and my father was sitting in my dining room the morning after skipping my opening night to ask me to fund my sister's latest scheme. "No," I said. He blinked, as if the word hadn't fully registered. "Excuse me." "No, I won't be investing." His face shifted. The diplomatic mask he'd worn my entire childhood, the patient, long-suffering patriarch, slipped just enough to show what was underneath. "Nico, this is family." "I know. We supported you through culinary school. We fronted your Stagiaira trip to Lyon. We." "You didn't front anything, Gerald." I used his first name deliberately. I had practiced this. "My culinary school was a student loan I've been paying back for 8 years. The Lyon trip, I saved for myself by working double shifts every weekend for a year. I kept the receipts." He stood up. Don't be ungrateful. We raised you. You raised Dana, I said simply. I raised myself, and I'm done funding the gap between those two facts. He stared at me with an expression I had seen on his face only once before, at Dana's third failed business launch, when he'd finally understood the money wasn't coming back. It was the face of a man recalculating. He left without another word. I stood in my dining room and breathed. The pendant lights above the tables cast small, warm pools on the concrete floor. The moss walls exhaled something green and living. I had said the thing. I had finally said it. I knew it wasn't over. 3 days later, I arrived at Carta Bianca at noon to find a city inspector on my doorstep. Her name was Inspector Holt. She was polite, professional, and visibly uncomfortable. We received a complaint, she said, regarding fire safety code violations, specifically blocked egress routes and an unregistered commercial exhaust system. My kitchen had passed inspection 6 weeks ago. I had the certificate framed above the prep station. I let her in. She spent 90 minutes. She measured the egress with a laser tool. She photographed the exhaust hood, the hood suppression system, the emergency exits, the electrical panel. She found nothing because there was nothing to find. My contractor had built the kitchen to code and then built it past code because I had asked him to. Who filed the complaint? I asked as she wrote up her clean report. Anonymous tip, she said, but I'll tell you whoever it was described the space in very specific detail. They'd either been inside recently or, she trailed off. Anyway, you're fully compliant, have a good service. I walked her out. I smiled at the 2 tables of early diners who had watched the whole thing. Then I went to my office and pulled up the camera log. The previous afternoon, a silver SUV parked across the street for 40 minutes. Dana's. Before we continue the story, I just want to share something from my heart. Writing these stories has become more than just a hobby for me. It's something I truly enjoy and spend a lot of time creating for you all. Recently, I was looking through my channel analytics, and I noticed that many people who watch my videos don't usually leave a like or comment. I've never really been the type to ask for it, but the truth is, every like, comment, and subscribe helps these stories reach more people. It tells YouTube that this video is worth sharing, and that support genuinely helps this channel grow. So if you're enjoying the story so far, I'd really appreciate it if you take a second to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe. Your support means more than you know, and it helps me continue bringing more stories like this to life. Now, let's continue the story. Car. I knew the plate. I'd seen it in my parents' driveway for 15 years. I sat with that for a long moment. Then I opened my laptop and began drafting a letter to my attorney. The knock came at 11 p.m. after service, while I was breaking down the pass. Soft, uncertain, the back door. I checked the monitor. It was Theo. Theo was Dana's business partner, and, until recently, her fiancé. He was holding a coffee cup he clearly wasn't drinking, standing in the alley with the expression of a man who had just discovered something in the walls of a house he'd been living in for years. I opened the door. I need you to hear something, he said. He sat at my prep station. His hands were steady, but his voice wasn't. Dana's deal isn't in Meridian Heights, he said. There's no commercial rezoning. There never was. The $75,000 your father asked for, it's not a bridge loan. It's a debt payment. To who? To the same people who have been funding Dana's other deals. Private lenders. Hard money. She's been rolling losses into new projects for 2 years. She owes north of $120,000, and the window to restructure closed last month. My stomach turned. How does my restaurant factor in? He placed his phone on the counter and pressed play. The recording was clear. Quiet room, close microphone, a living room, I guessed. My father's voice first, low and methodical. He won't invest voluntarily. We've established that. Dana, so we go around him. The partnership agreement has a management rights clause on page 9. If he signs as a silent partner, even a symbolic stake, It triggers co-ownership provisions. We can access the asset ledger. Gerald, what does that get us? Dana, the equipment alone, the ovens, the refrigeration units, the custom millwork, it all appraises at close to $200,000. If we file a co-ownership claim, we can petition for liquidation. Force a sale. He gets his share, we get the rest. His debt to us for the Lyon trip, the culinary school cosign we never actually gave but he can't disprove. Gerald, he'll fight it. Dana, he can fight it from an empty building. The inspection complaint buys us time. We keep the pressure on until he's so overwhelmed he either signs or folds. Either way, we win. A pause. He's always been too sentimental about the cooking thing. He'll break. The recording ended. The kitchen was very quiet. I looked at Theo. The cosign, I said. She said I can't disprove it, does she have? She had your father write a letter dated 2016. It's fake. I have the original draft on his computer. It was created last Tuesday. He placed a USB drive on the counter. Everything is on here. The debt records, the draft letter, the attorney correspondence. I was supposed to be in this with them. His jaw tightened. I'm not. Why are you doing this? He was quiet for a moment. Because I spent 4 years watching you build something real, he said. And I spent 4 years watching Dana tear things down and call it business. I chose the wrong one to believe in. He pushed back from the counter. I'm sorry it took me this long. After he left, I sat alone in my kitchen. The convection ovens were dark. The hood fans were off. The room smelled of roasted stock and clean steel. They weren't just trying to take money from me. They were going to forge documents, file legal claims, and dismantle this place piece by piece. They were going to sell my handmade ceramics for scrap. They were going to auction my imported ovens to pay for Dana's mistakes. And then they would tell everyone I had failed. I picked up the USB drive. She'll break. I smiled at my own reflection in the oven door. Let's see. They arrived the next evening at 6:15, the beginning of service. My father in his meeting blazer. Dana in the blazer she wore when she wanted to look like she'd already won. They were carrying a leather portfolio. The partnership agreement, I assumed, printed, tabbed, and ready for a signature they were confident they were going to get. I had seated them at the corner booth. The full house was in service around them. Every other table was occupied. Priya was expediting. The sommelier was mid-pour at table 7. I came out of the kitchen personally. Nico, Gerald smiled the smile of a man who thinks he's already closed the deal. Glad you're being reasonable about this. Sit down, I said. I'll be right with you. I went back to the pass. I plated 2 dishes, the 4th course, a slow-braised short rib over celery root puree with a bone marrow juice. The best thing on the menu. I carried them to the corner booth myself and set them down. Before we talk, I said, eat. They looked at each other, then at the plates, then at me. Nico, Dana started. Eat, I said pleasantly. It's on me. They ate. I watched them. Dana finished half the plate. Gerald cleared his. He looked up with something close to an emotion I hadn't seen on his face in years, something adjacent to being present. This is good, he said, and for one unguarded second he meant it. I know, I said. I reached into my jacket pocket and set a small wireless speaker on the table between the bread basket and the wine glasses. Then I took out my phone. Before you open that portfolio, I said, I want to play you something. I pressed play. Their own voices filled the corner booth. The recording Theo had made in the living room, Gerald's measured tone, Dana's efficient scheming, force a sale, liquidate, he'll break, spilling out into the warm candlelight of the room I had built. Dana went white. Gerald's hand moved toward the portfolio and then stopped. The tables nearest to them had gone quiet. Not obviously, no one turned to stare, but the room had that particular silence of people who are very carefully not looking at something. I turned the recording off. The copy of that file is already with my attorney, I said, along with the draft forgery of the cosign letter, timestamped from Gerald's laptop last Tuesday. along with the fire department complaint traced to Dana's phone number through the inspector's records. I paused. And along with the police report I filed this morning for filing a false safety complaint, which carries, as it turns out, a fine and a potential fraud charge when it's part of a larger scheme to coerce a business owner. Dana opened her mouth. Don't, I said, not unkindly, just finally. I reached into my jacket and set 2 envelopes on the table. Inside each envelope is a cease and desist. It bars you from this property, from contacting my staff, and from making any claim, legal, verbal, or otherwise, against this restaurant or its assets. I picked up the portfolio and held it out to Gerald. Take this with you. I won't be signing anything. Gerald took it slowly. He looked old suddenly. The blazer that had always made him look authoritative just looked like a blazer now. You would do this to your family, he said. Not a question, almost a statement of awe. You tried to take everything I built, I said. You tried to do it with forged documents and false inspections and a phone call made from Dana's car parked outside my window. I kept my voice even. The whole room was listening now, and no one was pretending otherwise. I'm not doing anything to my family. I'm just done letting my family do things to me. I stepped back. Finish your dinner if you want. It's paid for. Then leave and don't come back. They left the short rib half-eaten. The door closed behind them, and for a moment the whole dining room was still. Then Priya called a ticket from the pass. And service resumed, and that was that. 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday night, every seat in Carta Bianca was full. The corner booth had a 2-top, a couple on what was clearly a first date, leaning toward each other over the bread course, the whole rest of the world already falling away. I was behind the pass when Priya slid a folded napkin across the steel to me. Table 3 left this, she said. Guy in the brown jacket, he's gone. I unfolded it. 5 words in black pen. This room has a soul. Underneath, a name I recognized. The food editor of the city's most read magazine, a man who had shuttered 2 restaurants with a single paragraph. Clipped to the napkin was his business card with a note. Call me. I want to do a piece. I set it on the pass and looked out at the dining room. Priya was laughing at something a regular had said. The sommelier was describing a natural wine with the intensity of someone explaining why the moon matters. A 4-top in the back corner was sharing a dessert and arguing cheerfully about something irrelevant. None of them were blood. Every one of them was family. I had not lost a family when I locked that door. I had finally found one. If you have ever had to build your own table because the one you were born to didn't have a seat for you, you are not alone. Share this story. Someone out there needs to hear it tonight.